Cool. Well, let's kick it off with our, not so normal top five.
All right. So, because I couldn't get us out of here without doing something that has a listing of five, we're gonna pit, I guess, iconic things when we grew up. I think Zeno still has that fly in his house, by the way, from the last episode. But we're gonna I'm gonna pit two of the big iconic things that we grew up with, right? So first, we are talking about Britney Spears, right? So we're gonna pit the two female icons, I guess, of that time period, which is Britney Spears or Christina Aguilera. If you had to choose between those two, or if you are a fan of one of those, which one is it?
I've always been partial to Christina Aguilera, mostly because I've heard opposite of this more recently, but I actually always felt like Britney couldn't really sing like that, and whereas Christina Aguilera was like a vocal powerhouse. Now, more recently, I've been shared videos of like Britney singing without all the extra like auto tuning that was very prevalent in her music. Whoever her producer is or whatever, for some reason they always felt like we got to make it more electronic and put all the extra bells and whistles. Because I've heard her sing without that, and she can sing. But Christina Aguilera, voice-wise, is just a powerhouse. So that's an easy one for me.
All right. So I'm trying to think of which one affected my puberty the most. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, it has to be Christina Aguilera just because of the singing chops, right? She's like a legitimate like diva singer, right? But I will say that, yeah, from Britney Spears is like an iconic sound. So that's the one thing that Britney Spears has over Christina Aguilera, I think, which is she has more iconic. She has more of an iconic feel. You know, the "Hit Me Baby One More Time" with putting the ponytails and tying up the waistband, whatever's it called. They tied the shirt up or whatever. Yeah. Her and Justin, which I'm still hurt about. Her and Justin being broken up. You know. So I would say on an icon level, Britney Spears takes it. But in regards to as an artist, if I had to listen to them, I would go with Christina Aguilera all day.
I think Britney was a bigger name in that time for both good and bad reasons, right? Like I think she was thrust into the spotlight a little too much too early. And I believe she and Christina are the same age. But everyone was into, because Britney Spears had this whole thing about, oh, she's a virgin, and oh, she's like, cookie cutter type of girl type. Whereas Christina was like, almost like very early on, Christina fell into that whole bad girl role between the two of them, ex-Tina. Yeah. But because Britney was trying to uphold this whole, the pious one type of, feel or whatever, any little misstep, people were like very quick to be like, oh, look at this. Oh, I bet she's had sex now. Oh, they broke up. What happened? So, and I think that probably it grew her status in like mainstream media, but it was also to her detriment. But yeah.
I'm actually going to talk about that when I talk about what she says. She actually does mention something similar about her being, and she's like been working since she was 16. So that's actually very important.
Okay.
But yeah, so in this one, Christina wins it. All right, we're gonna move from something even more manly. Backstreet Boys or Insync?
Insync.
Okay, I mean, there's gonna be no fight there because like we're both Did you see the recent video of them hanging out though? So it was Joey Fatone and Lance Bass from Insync, and Nick and the bad boy of Backstreet Boys. I forget his name.
Carter? Oh, sorry. No, that's Nick Carter. Sorry.
It was one of the Carters, and then the other guy, the one with the hairs, the one that went to like rehab one time.
Yeah, or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, we don't know. Somebody correct us if we know the name. But anyways, they were reenacting they were moving a couch, and they were reenacting Ross. So it was the bad boy from Backstreet Boys, not AJ. That's another one. Yeah. Anyways, they were redoing it, and he was going like, "What's it called? Pivot." Yeah. And then Joey Fatone was like, "Shut up, shut up, shut up." So it was pretty funny. But as far as like, I'm not gonna lie, man. I might have contributed to the $2.1 million sales that they had on their second CD that first week. I might have contributed. I might have gone and walked my way to Walmart. I think I walked to Kmart and went and bought it. I might have done that. You know, it was it was a trip. I had a book bag and everything. I was like, I'm gonna go on a trip. So I walked about like 2 miles to Kmart, went there, stopped at Checkers, and I was listening to the CD while I was there. You know, bye.
Well, you know what? I accept your confession. It takes a big man. No, actually, look, man, I really like Insync. So I mean, I wasn't like a big like boy band type of person anyway, but like I honestly can't remember a Backstreet Boys song that I'm like, oh, this thing comes out, oh yeah, I want to hear it. Insync, there's at least a good 3 or 4, and I love one of my favorite videos from Insync is I Want You Back, the one where they're in space and they're dancing, and then there's that one where you do like the step to the left, right, left, and then it's like there's like the thing over his head. I remember when I said I was like, I'm gonna nail that move, and I did. I always felt like Insync videos are always better, and the songs were just more catchy and popular, whereas Backstreet Boys are more like ballads and more of the love song tip, which is fine. You know, it's just it wasn't my thing. I was more of an Insync guy.
I could tell you, I'm not gonna lie, I could do a top 5 of my favorite Insync versus Backstreet Boys songs. I really could, just because I did listen to them and they're catchy ass songs. Like people just hate on them because they're boy bands, but they're catchy ass songs.
You don't want to be seen as like, oh, I like boy bands. No. But
and then now that we're older, we can admit that we like because it is what it is. All right. Anyway, so Insync takes that one. All right, this one I don't know if you have a good opinion on how much of an opinion you would have on this one, but I'm gonna go with Korn versus Limp Bizkit.
So I actually don't. I mean, I know of Korn, but I couldn't tell you any of their songs. I do know Limp Bizkit, so that's an easy one for me, just by default, right? I know Limp Bizkit and Fred Durst, and I don't know Korn, so I can't expand on that.
So I actually would choose, as a band in total and as their catalog in total, I would say Korn, just because they're still around. The same thing with Backstreet Boys; they're still around. They're Backstreet men, you know. But Korn is still around. Actually, my friend tagged me on a photo because I believe it's going to be Korn and POD are going to be in concert, and I've always wanted to watch POD live because
What's POD? Is that they just call POD?
Yeah, POD. It's dang, how does it go? No, I don't want to sing.
Does POD stand for something?
Yeah, it stands for Payable on Death. So they really are. They're actually a Christian band, but they came out as nu metal after a while because they were always nu metal too. They're the ones that sung the song "We Are the Youth of the Nation. We are." Really? Youth of the Nation. They actually just recently used that song on a trailer. I forgot which one, but they actually just recently reused that song on a trailer. But anyways, between Korn and Korn is coming out. Limp Bizkit's like 2 of their albums I freaking love. Recently I started listening to Limp Bizkit's the Chocolate Starfish and the Hot Dog Flavored Water because remember Rollin'. Remember they had a remix, a hip hop version that had DMX, Method Man, and Redman as well. But it was DMX. The reason I listened to it because this was when DMX passed away. That I started listening to it again. We talked about
it on that episode, the DMX episode.
I did bring it up, didn't I? Yeah. So I'm gonna give Limp Bizkit the edge on this one, but Korn is still, as a band overall, I would say Korn still has a much better catalog. Because Limp Bizkit kind of ran its course. Like after Chocolate Starfish and the Hot Dog Flavored Water, people didn't really listen to them anymore. So Korn, they still have a good amount of followers. A good amount of fans still were listening to them. Don't get me wrong, if Limp Bizkit came out in concert, I'd go because I have to watch them before, and I have to watch them before they get too old and before I get too old to be going to those type of concerts. So, anyways, all right, this one's actually going to be. I'm going to switch this because the last one is going to be something definitely within our realm. But I'm going to go ahead and ask you. Matrix versus Lord of the Rings. Those are the 2 big movie franchises. Between I'm actually I already could tell you who I'm gonna vote for. You already know who I'm gonna vote for, but I can give you a reason why the other one I wouldn't be shocked if people when people say this one.
Okay, before I answer, we're voting on the franchise as a whole, right? Like
Franchise
there's
as a whole, and you have to. We're not including the Hobbits.
no, right. The three movies versus the three movies.
Yeah, if you had to basically go to these are the only movies that you can watch. Like no more movie. You have to watch this one, so you have to watch these on repeat if you have to.
Yeah, I'll pick Lord of the Rings. Now, I love The Matrix. The Matrix, especially the first one, like revolutionized action movie making. Like how many action movies started doing bullet time after The Matrix, right? And just like
remember we talked about how Hamilton had bullet time in the play.
Right. Yeah, you know, just the fight choreography and all that stuff. It was iconic. Great movie, great action movie. The Lord of the Rings, the trilogy, is elevated. It's an elevated fantasy film. Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. We talked about this. Was the first fantasy film to win Best Picture at the Oscars, if I'm not mistaken, and it won like 11 Oscars that night. It is high art, but enjoyable as well. Whereas Matrix is really enjoyable. I love the action scenes, but there's a lot that you can watch it and be like, this doesn't make sense, you know. So, the question is probably like, why are you looking for things to make sense in sci-fi and fantasy movies? But and my pick there is Lord of the Rings for the reasons I've stated.
I'm gonna go with Lord of the Rings too, but I will say that The Matrix actually was quite impactful to me. Reason being is I actually wrote a paper on them. By the way, anybody who's going to college and you want an easy A and you're not like a film major, don't take film. It is not an easy A. They take themselves too damn serious. Like, all I wanted to do was watch a movie and then write some papers on them. Like, there's no reason I should have struggled to get an easy A in that class. Like, that was the hardest easy A of my life. So anyways, I wrote a paper on The Matrix, and the one thing about The Matrix that I loved was the religious undertones that they had, the different type of metaphors that they had, and stacking it with that, you know, it was pretty stacking it with like the special effects. I'm looking for something because actually there's a book that I used to write my paper, and I'm trying to see if I can find it before I move on. Oh, here it is. So it's called The Gospel Reloaded.
Okay.
Right, by Chris C.A. and Greg Garrett. So it's actually really, it's like, if you have a chance to read this book, it's really cool because they actually like break it down about, like, you know, the different types of metaphors and all that stuff, and like in the philosophical stuff, because there's a lot of philosophical stuff in there too. So The Matrix is iconic. The Matrix is it's definitely in my top 20, I would think. You know, at least the first one, right?
Yeah.
Even though I was one of the very few people who loved the third one.
That's another reason why I'll pick Lord of the Rings over The Matrix. It's because I actually like the third one too. I think the second movie brought the trilogy down. Even though the fight against the twins, I think they're like albino and they had dreads. That was pretty cool.
But them being albino with dreads?
No, the fight. The fight.
Oh, okay. I was like, I thought that was cool.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that movie kind of brought down the trilogy a little bit. But yeah, no, I love The Matrix, and yeah,
I still love The Matrix. I actually would say that the third movie is the one that brought it down, even though I loved it, but only because there was a lot of unresolved issues. Maybe The Matrix 4 will fix that. Maybe that actually, you know what I mean? Maybe that'll actually bump up the thing, but I'm not gonna bump Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is my, I consider it one movie, so I can cheat and put that in my top 5. And it's my number. The Lord of the Rings in total is my top 3 movie, my third favorite movie of all time. So, you know.
So that's a long movie, man.
I've done it. Can't do it now with the kids, but I've done it. Woke up early, or whenever I woke up, popped the movie in. I might have taken some breaks, you know, little pee breaks here and there. Go get some dinner. Pick up some snacks But I've done it. It's a movie. Damn it. If I can watch it in one sitting, it's a movie. So, all right, Lord of the Rings took that one. Then the next one is going to be, because these both came out when we were kids and revolutionized the game, because our podcast probably wouldn't exist without these two coming out. You already know what I'm talking about.
No, I don't.
Oh, well, SpiderMan Vs. XMen. the first X-Men movie versus the first Spider-Man, or you can even say the first couple of movies.
The trilogy, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, and then the Bryan Singer
Yes
X-Men trilogy.
It's hard.
That's a really good one.
I'm glad I saved this one to last.
Because I actually do find Spider-Man 2 to be one of the all-time great superhero movies. But so is X-Men 2.
And then the third ones both drag both of them down.
Yeah. You know what? That's how I'm going to pick the winner. Which one's third movie dragged the others down the least? You know what? I did not hate X-Men United. I know a lot of people were mad about it. I did not hate it. But I hated Spider-Man 3 even less. I thought people were too hard on the movie. There was a lot of cringy stuff with him being symbiote Spider-Man or Venom Spider-Man, whatever. Emo Spider-Man, yeah. But when you go back and watch the Spider-Man trilogy from beginning, the whole thing was campy. Spider-Man 2 was probably the least campy of the trilogy. But the first movie, Willem Dafoe really leaned into it, right? He knew what he was doing. It's like, look, this is a superhero movie, and Sam Raimi wants me to be campy. I'm gonna do it, and it was a fun movie, fun trilogy because of it. I thought people were too hard on Spider-Man 3, so I picked Spider-Man over the X-Men series just because of Spider-Man 3 being better than X-Men United. But X-Men, the first one, and X2, those, top notch.
I'm gonna pick Spider-Man, but you're actually gonna be shocked at what I'm about to say.
Okay.
I didn't care for the first X-Men movie.
You didn't like the first X-Men? Okay.
I didn't care for it.
Okay.
I thought it was one. My friend still makes fun of it because I said this. I was like, it wasn't true to the genre. What I really meant was it wasn't true to the comics because they did a lot of different things in the comics, right? But of course, now over time, I've gotten over that part because they fixed it, right? They at least they try to rectify it with the other movies, right? But I thought it was actually, to me, it was a little bit boring. Actually, to me, it was really slow paced. But that was also because that movie was technically speaking ahead of its time. The special effects were slowly catching up to how they could do that movie. That's why you see these freaking bro, can you imagine the special effects that the first X-Men would have if they had the same special effects as Avengers Infinity Wars? You know what I mean? That's why I'm with that one, that's the reason why I was it was just a little slow for me. But X2, so I'll put it like this. If I had to choose between all those movies of 1, 2, and 3, it would be Spider-Man 2, X2, and then Spider-Man, the first one.
Mm-hmm.
But X2, I might even put it above Spider-Man 2. So that's how good X2 is just such a good movie that it'd be hard to pick. But I'm still gonna go with Spider-Man. But
I think X2 benefited from having the first movie, right?
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is X-Men, and this is also true for all the X-Men animated series. The ones in the one in the 90's and X-Men Evolution, and then Wolverine and the X-Men.
Do you recommend those?
X-Men Evolution, I really liked, but I wouldn't tell anyone to go back and watch it now. I really recommend Wolverine and the X-Men. That's a really good show. What all three of them showed, the same thing as the first movie, when you have so many characters, so all these mutants that deserve proper time being spent on character building, what tends to happen is it becomes a slower paced thing, right? This is where Avengers didn't have that problem because they had the solo movies to build out those characters ahead of time, so that you can go into the Avengers and already know who these characters are. And now you're working on building out the character relationships. Whereas X-Men, the first movie, had the unenviable task of trying to introduce Professor X, Magneto, Jean Grey, Cyclops, all of them, and give them the proper amount of time required. So it was always going to be a slow build up to whatever the final act was. X-Men 2 didn't have to worry about that because it was okay, you already know these characters. Let's get right to it. The Senator is trying to, he's basically trying to do a mutant genocide, or maybe not that bad, but yeah. But either way, I agree with your thoughts on it. I think X2 is either on par with or maybe above Spider-Man 2.
It really is. Just because yeah, that movie is just so damn good. I freaking love X2. And if let's just say X1 was a little bit more entertaining, like if the first X-Men had been like say Days of Future Past,
yeah,
X-Men would take it for me.
But
like,
I think, and you can even see it in that comparison, right? Where I talked about Spider-Man being campy. I think X-Men as a series, even as a comic book series, has always taken itself more seriously than other comic book runs, especially with Marvel, because it was supposed to be an allegory for the civil rights movement when it came out, right? It's like a heavy topic that it's going over. Whereas Spider-Man is like this teenager who has spider webs coming out of his hands, right? It's like it's just a very different feel.
That's an allegory too, by the way.
Okay. Okay, all right.
It's an allegory for puberty.
Okay, all right. Anyway, point being, yes, it was maybe more boring, but I think that's kind of by design.
Yeah. No, actually, you actually made me appreciate it a little bit more now. That I might actually just go ahead and rewatch it and kind of keep that in mind. And I actually probably would be surprised. Plus, you're expecting so much in your head for the first X-Men movie that that ended up probably it was like self-fulfilling prophecy in my own head. I was like, oh, this movie's gonna be badass, and I was like, oh, that's cool. So hey, I got to see mutants. It was pretty cool. So anyways, all right, man. So that's our improv top 5. I don't know what the hell to call it. Top 5 verses, maybe. Yeah. There you go. That's what you're gonna put in the title. Top 5 verses. Throwdown. There you go. Top 5 throwdown. All right. So we got that.